In any locations where there's not enough supply for sharing, Tesla will just make its own cars and add them to the network in that place.
Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I'm working on some other videos, but I watched something today that blew me away, and I felt the need to make a reaction video in response to a video where Dave Lee interviewed Zac and Jesse from the Now You Know channel. And it just got me really excited, so I'm going to get into it. Before I get started, I want to thank Bradford Ferguson of Halter Ferguson Financial and all my Patreon supporters for helping this channel grow. And I want to remind people about the merch, t-shirts, Elon Fan Club, check the description below, all kinds of t-shirts. So let's talk about full self-driving, the cost of full self-driving. And I want to say this, I love Dave Lee. I subscribe to his channel. I think he's really good. He's a great interviewer. He just had a great interview with Steve and Mark Ryan of the Solving the Money Problem channel also. I love Zac and Jesse. I actually stopped subscribing to their channel, and it's funny because I watched this interview and I found myself agreeing with Zac and Jesse a lot more than I agree with Dave, even though I subscribe to Dave's channel and watch more of his videos. And I think what happened is I just agree with Zac and Jesse all the time, so it's not interesting for me to watch their videos anymore. So I may start watching their videos again because I was compelled by how much I agreed with them. But at the same time, I thought they didn't get the strongest arguments across as to why Dave is so frequently wrong in this video. So let's go through. I'm going to show you some clips and then I'm going to react. Are you ready? Let's go.
I think what's interesting with these OEMs is they're not really tech companies or innovation companies. Like their focus over dozens and dozens of years is more massive logistics, moving operations, supply chain management. And
that's it. That's what they should be called, is supply chain management companies.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the stuff that improving the parts, they're just using their supply chain, and then the suppliers are improving parts.
Just a real quick comment here. I agree with all three of them on this, but I think they missed something. The big car companies, GM and Ford in particular, they're actually finance companies. Yes, they're supply chain management companies, and there's a part about making the cars, but it's also a lot about service, and it's a lot about finance. Most of their profits are made from leasing or from financing cars. That's the business model. It's MBAs and bean counters, which they talk about otherwise in the video, in their interview. But I just, overall, I agree, they're not innovators. Supply chain, finance, there's other business things that they're doing. They're not innovating. That's not their thing.
Let's actually hash some of this stuff out. What year do you think Tesla will launch their robotaxi network? What year do you think Tesla will stop selling vehicles to the public? And around what year do you think people just, in general, half or more of the people in the world just won't own cars anymore?
Okay, I'm going to play Zac and Jesse's answer in a minute. I just want to give my quick answers. That number one, Robo-taxi network should go live by the end of 2022, and there is a chance, depending on how quickly the full self-driving software learns on its current path, it's possible that it goes live somewhere on Earth before the end of 2021. We just don't know how fast it's going to learn. We don't know what it's going to take, what the standard is. And the other thing to recognize, and Zac and Jesse touch on this a little bit, some jurisdictions, some locations will be more favorable than others. They, for some reason, think the city of San Francisco is going to be the first place. I think the state of Florida is an excellent prospect for this. I think China is very, very forward-thinking, and we're seeing China be very forward-thinking. So it's hard to predict where it's going to be first. I wouldn't be surprised if it was China first. And for those who say, oh, well, it's not going to be that good compared to human drivers, have you seen drivers in Florida? Have you ever been to Miami or Tampa? Drivers here are terrible. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And then the next question is, when does Tesla stop selling cars? And that relates to something we're going to talk about later. What's really going to happen is Tesla is going to increase the price of cars to a point where the only people who can afford to buy a Tesla car are the people who are going to run it in a robo-taxi network or people who are just really wealthy. That's what I predict. And I think that will start happening in 2024 or earlier. Once the full self-driving software is essentially complete, it'll still be getting better. Once the robo-taxi network is live, then 2023, 2024, the price of getting a Tesla goes through the roof. And there will be a progression, and maybe some vehicles will still be available. but over time it's going to become you're not going to be able to buy a Tesla unless you're in a special case. Let's hear what Zac and Jesse have to say about it.
So, well, we know that they're going to be making a robo-taxi soon. They leaked it at Battery Day, a covered car, $25,000, and I think they might start selling it, as in you could buy one. I think that they're going to kind of work their way up the food chain of stopping the sales of cars. So I think that they would start with that robo-taxi, and if we're talking year, I think
2 years is plausible for them to have one city in America where this rolls out. So a city like San Francisco, which is right now, allowing autonomous cars to drive in.
right.
And so let's just say that the robotaxi software and hardware is ready, and that San Francisco would allow some kind of test of, say, 1,000 cars or something. I can imagine that rolling out, and I can imagine if that works, if it's safe enough and the regulators are happy, that it starts ramping up, and that other cities start competing to actually get the technology in their cities. And this is where I think a lot of people would disagree with me and say, no, regulators, Zach, they're slow moving, governments are slow. I think that municipal governments and state governments are not as slow as we think. And I think that if there's going to be a disadvantage to your city to not have this, then you will actually move pretty quickly as a mayor or city council or whatever to get it. So I think it's plausible that in 2 or 3 years, we have a couple American cities with the robotaxi network operating.
Right.
So as you heard from me before, I mostly agree with that. I think the vision that it happens in an American city is a little bit egocentric for Americans to think that. I think we're underestimating China. The other thing is, I think they may be overestimating the difficulty in dealing with certain cities. It depends a lot on politics. And let's face it, California seems pro-Tesla, but when Alameda County came after the Tesla factory, there were not a lot of voices coming out of California politicians to take Tesla's side. So from what I see, certain other places, I think Florida is very pro-Tesla. It's looking very much like Texas is pro-Tesla right now. And China has been very much pro-Tesla. It's kind of funny that comments on my videos, when I did a video about NIO, all these people were saying, oh, China's not going to support Tesla. China's already supporting Tesla. There's a lot of potential in a lot of places, and I don't think we should underestimate the potential for the robotaxi network to go live somewhere like, let's say, the Dominican Republic, which has a very, very high traffic accident and traffic fatality rate. Certain countries have really, really bad traffic and really, really bad traffic problems. If Tesla could be introduced, robotaxi network could be introduced in a place that has very high traffic deaths, and having very safe cars that save a lot of lives, it might make more sense there. I'm not saying that's likely. I'm just saying think outside the box for a second. That's possible. Anyway, let's move on.
But remember, there's two backlashes against Uber. One is, well, they're both related around the driver. One is that the driver could be a bad person, right? And so you could be hurt by the driver. The second is that the drivers weren't paid much. And so there was a backlash of like, Uber, you're just kind of taking advantage of all these people. Those two things don't happen with the robotaxi network because there's no driver. So
You have the backlash of Uber drivers
drives.
and taxi drivers, which taxi drivers are throwing bricks at Ubers. So totally not going to be the cleanest thing in the world.
This is one of those things that annoys me, that people just sort of accept that people will be angry about a new market entrant coming in and doing well, and they'll vandalize cars and they'll throw bricks. So I don't like that. It seems just sort of cavalierly accepted that that's going to happen, which I think is a bad attitude. I think people who vandalize and cause damage to cars in that way should be arrested and prosecuted. Even libertarian me thinks, no, you can't harm other people. You can't harm other people's property. That's wrong. The other thing to recognize is that one of the special things about robotaxis, about Tesla robotaxis, is there's going to be 8 cameras recording what happens. And if you throw a brick at a robotaxi, it's going to be recorded and your video image is going to be on it. We've seen this with Tesla Sentry Mode before. So I think it's a lot less likely that people will successfully attack Tesla robotaxis because it will be recorded. The only exception to this is in the age we're in now, where apparently it's not illegal to commit crimes anymore, and people don't want to arrest and punish people for committing crimes. Well, I guess maybe it'll happen. But more likely, if you damage someone's car, they're going to hold you accountable for it. And I think the idea that there will be this backlash against robotaxis I don't think it's going to fly. I think you're going to get caught and you're going to get in trouble. And if it's a jurisdiction that doesn't protect the robo-taxis, then the robo-taxis won't operate in that jurisdiction. They'll go somewhere that does protect them. It's very easy to move a car to somewhere that does appreciate what these cars are doing for people.
I think that right around the time that this starts ramping up, Tesla is going to start ramping up production of the robotaxi. And so I think within a few years of that, a couple, probably one or two, we'll start to see this robotaxi, which Tesla still might be selling to people. You might be able to buy a robotaxi for $25,000.
But to get it on the network, I think the cost of full self-driving, which today is $10,000, I think will be, Elon has said 100,000 in that range. I think that when they turn on the network, it's got to be at least $30,000 to $50,000 for the full self-driving option.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to come back to this later in the video, but I just want to hit this now because this is really important. $100,000 is cheap for the robotaxi full self-driving software package. Once Tesla makes a robotaxi, and that once Tesla makes any car, and they have the robotaxi software, full self-driving software ready and running, think about this. If Tesla keeps the car, it doesn't sell the car, it keeps the car and runs it as a robotaxi themselves. And let's say they charge $1 a mile. Now, these guys are talking later in the video, you hear they're talking bigger numbers than $1 a mile. But let's say they only charge $1 a mile, run 100,000 miles a year, and they only get paid 60,000 miles a year because the car isn't full all the time. So that's $60,000 a year in revenue. Operating cost is probably less than 10 cents a mile, but let's call it 10 cents a mile. So $10,000 a year in cost. You're making $50,000 a year in profit on this car. $500,000 over its 10-year, 1 million mile life. Why would Tesla sell that for $125,000? That would be crazy. It would be crazy for Tesla to sell it for less than maybe $300,000. So if Tesla sold this software, the FSD, autopilot, full self-driving robotaxi software, for $100,000, it would be dumb for Tesla to do it. It would be dumb for you not to buy it.
And I think that one of the things that Tesla could kind of do would be to leverage people buying the cars as a way to offset the cost of manufacturing the car.
Zac mentions you could finance it. Of course you could finance it. If you were a bank and he said, hey, I'm going to spend $125,000 in this car, but I'm going to make, let's say, $40,000 a year in revenue after I share profits with Tesla, well, that means I'm going to make $400,000 on this $125,000 investment. Of course I'll loan you the money. Of course I will. And if you don't pay, then I'll just take the car and I'll run it myself if I'm the bank. So it's going to be easy to finance it. Everything's going to work out. And this idea that Tesla needs vehicle buyers to front them the money to manufacture the cars is false. Tesla's going to make the money back on that car. Tesla's cost of the car is less than $25,000, right? It doesn't cost Tesla anything to have the robotaxi software in the car. So it costs, and if the car costs $25,000, it costs them less than $25,000 to make it. They're going to make $50,000 in profit in the first year. So they don't need any help making these cars. This is, I feel like Zac and Jesse, I agree with them generally. I don't think they go far enough. I think this is a much bigger story, and Dave completely misses it, and we're going to cover that later. So let's keep going.
But here's where I really do think that probably you had asked when will this happen. I think in about 10 years, Elon's going to shut off selling cars to you because it'll make more sense to keep them for themselves and just have the robotaxi network.
So again, I generally agree with Jesse. I just think his timing is way off. It's going to be much sooner than 10 years. Once the car is running in a robotaxi network, I just explained the numbers. Why would, I suppose Tesla will always sell the car if you're willing to pay fair value, but it really doesn't make sense. And I have a video where I talk about why I think Tesla will stop selling cars. Now has a video about this as well. But just practically speaking, the transaction cost of Tesla selling the car to somebody to own it and then run it on the robotaxi network, and the transactions cost of who gets what share of the money, it doesn't really make sense for Tesla to do that when Tesla can just run the cars on the robotaxi network itself. I don't buy it. I don't see why Tesla is selling cars anymore. They make all the cars they can. They put them all on the robotaxi network until they reach market saturation, which is more than 10 years away. So there's no reason, once Tesla has this, there's no reason for Tesla to continue selling cars other than sort of goodwill, or, maybe we're already making the Model S and the Model X and it's not perfect for the robo-taxi network, so we'll sell those. But Model 3s, Model Ys, and the coming Tesla compact robo-taxi, whatever, those are optimized for the robo-taxi network. It doesn't make sense to sell them. So if you want, my whole take is, if you want a Tesla because you want to keep it in your garage and you don't want to let people ride in your car, buy it soon, because you got a couple of years before Tesla starts charging an outrageous amount of money for that car. And they're not going to sell it without full self-driving, because they can use every vehicle they make, they can put in the robo-taxi network and make that $500,000. Why would they sell it to you for $25,000 or $50,000 without full self-driving, when they can keep it, put the full self-driving software in it for themselves at no cost and make $500,000? The day when you can buy a Tesla and keep it at home is coming to a close fairly quickly. 2-3 years, maybe a little longer. It's not 10 years like Jesse said. It's going to be much sooner. It just doesn't make financial sense for Tesla to continue selling $500,000 cars for $50,000.
Right, because while this is going on, other car companies are going out of business. I mean, this is the other part of the equation that, again, people don't like to hear. But Ford, GM, Toyota, Honda, there's no path that I can see that keeps them in business. They're making something that's just completely obsolete already, and it's just going to be more obsolete going forward. So, none of us could believe that, Kodak and Polaroid and Blockbuster and all these companies would go out of business either. They were the market leaders. But as soon as Netflix comes along, or, something else comes along, boom, they're toast.
I want to agree with Zac there, and I should note, previously I called him Jesse and I got confused, but that was Zac speaking. I mostly agree with him there. The existing car companies are lost. They're done. I don't think there's any significant chance they're going to survive in the long run. Differently from Blockbuster and Kodak, I think there's a strong chance that some of these companies will get bailed out by their governments. That won't solve the problem that they don't make products people will want anymore, but they are seen as so central to countries' economies, and there are so many politicians who are so deeply in bed with these companies. I think there's a substantial chance, like we've already seen before, big bailouts for these companies. I definitely think there's a chance we'll see another certainly the German government could bail out Volkswagen. It wouldn't surprise me. The federal government and Michigan or whatever could help Ford, could help GM. Those companies are seen falsely, I believe, but they are seen as central to the economy. So some effort could be made to bail them out, which will keep them running longer. But ultimately, I don't think they can survive because their organizations are incapable of adapting to the rapidly changing world that's happening in front of us. So, I think Zac nailed that one.
And I think that's what's going to happen, which frees up a lot of factories, frees up a lot of robots. It frees up a lot of capital that Elon can swoop in and, either put into his factories or reutilize his factories. So it could speed up how many Teslas they can make.
And just like that, Zac lost me. No, Tesla does not want GM and Ford's crappy factories. They don't want GM and Ford's crappy equipment. Tesla is making new cars with new systems and new designs. There's pretty much nothing that GM and Ford and Chrysler have that Tesla will want or be able to use to do what they want to do. They're done. They're dead. Stick a fork in them. And Tesla does not want to operate factories in Michigan or other union states that make it very difficult to do business in a flexible way. Tesla is a flexible, rapidly innovating company, and union states hate that. They want jobs that are stable and clear and don't change. And Michigan is not going to provide an environment that allows Tesla to do business the way they want to do it. So the car industry's done. The factories in Michigan are done. Michigan's going to have to learn to move on. The other states that have difficult business environments, they're going to have to find something else to do. And you got to be brutal when it's time to be brutal. And that's the brutal answer. I should say there that there's a lot of talented people and hardworking people who work for these car companies, and there's certainly opportunities for them to move to where a Tesla factory is. If they are capable of innovating, if they are highly talented, highly motivated people, there's room for them at Tesla. Elon wants them. He doesn't want people who want a solid job that doesn't change and they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, because that's not the way Tesla operates. But there's going to be room for tens of thousands of jobs for people who have experience in the car industry and are motivated to come work for Tesla. I'm not saying all those jobs are gone. A lot of them are gone, but there's also going to be a lot of opportunities, and those people might make more money, especially if they get Tesla stock. Dave Lee's going to start talking now, and he's going to start going down the path of stuff I disagree with. So I'm going to take certain clips from what he says and interject at certain moments and tell you what he's got wrong or what I think he's got wrong. And Zac and Jesse will also address it. We'll see that too.
Let's, for sake of discussion, let's say, okay, hypothetically, Tesla does release their robotaxi network in a few cities within 2 or 3 years. They make the robotaxi, let's say in 3 or 4 years, and the networks are growing. These robotaxi networks are growing, and in urban areas, especially in other places. The jump I want to kind of explore is this jump 10 years down the road, you're saying, where Tesla will likely stop selling cars to the public. I think there's a few holes in that kind of conclusion. So the first is kind of this concept of ownership of a car and the variety of use cases, like let's say of a car. And I think like a lot of times in urban settings or people closer to cities, like the closer you are to a city, the less owning a car makes sense, because parking is hard. It just traffic is tough. It's just everything is, there's so many negatives about a car in some ways. And that's why Uber and Lyft and et cetera, they do very well in these urban settings. But the further you go out from the urban settings, the less appealing a ride sharing car is. Because, for example, I'm running a farm, I need to put stuff in my truck, or let's say a suburban mom or dad, they have 2 kids. Like I have 2 kids and we have our car seats in our car.
Yes, it's true that robo-taxis will serve cities better than farmers. And, it might be tough for farmers. It might be difficult for them to buy Teslas. There's plenty of first of all, they can buy the Cybertruck now. They can buy some other vehicle now. They'll still be able to buy existing internal combustion engine vehicles. There's lots of options for people who are left out of the Tesla robo-taxi revolution. But it's important to understand when we say, well, it's only for cities. Well, that's like half the world's population. Okay, let's not forget that the goal of Tesla is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. And Elon himself said, he thinks that regular people will operate their cars in robotaxi network in cities, and Tesla, if you go back to the autonomy day, he said, we'll probably operate our custom robotaxis in more suburban areas.
And as I said, where in any locations where there's not enough supply for sharing, Tesla will just make its own cars and add them to the network in that place.
The practical reality is this. First of all, we have Uber and Lyft. I live in the suburbs. We have Uber and Lyft here. It's available. If I need an Uber, I need a Lyft, I probably have a car in about 5 minutes. Robotaxi network will respond faster, will cost less. Robotaxi network will be more successful in the suburbs than the Uber and Lyft networks because the cost of operation is so much lower, because you don't need a driver. The challenge of finding drivers to drive the cars is not a problem. You just need the cars and have them somewhere nearby. Until there are enough robotaxis, which is probably more than 10 years out, until there are enough robotaxis to satisfy demand in cities and near cities, there's really no reason to worry from Tesla's standpoint about supplying vehicles for rural areas. And that's the other thing is he started talking about, and we're going to do more on this in a minute, he started talking about the soccer mom. There's a lot, the soccer mom problem. Well, it's not about you. And I'm talking not just about Dave Lee. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about him. It's about the drivers that this does appeal to first. Until Tesla reaches the point where it's made enough robo-taxis to satisfy the people who do want it, until that happens, it doesn't matter. And that's like half the world's population. So there's, think about all the big cities, Beijing, Tokyo, New York, San Francisco, all the big cities, there's going to be plenty of demand for robo-taxis, and it's going to take Tesla 10 years or more to make enough cars to satisfy that demand. So chill out. Anyway, let's go on. Let's hear more of Dave's story.
And I'm not going to want to get a ride sharing car because I don't know what I'm going to do with my car seats, or maybe they have car seats, but I don't even know what kind of car seats they have, you know? And then I have a ton of stuff that I keep in my car too. Like an avid golfer might want to keep their golfers. Some avid sports person might want to keep their rollerblades and their beach ball and their basketball and their gym equipment. And there's a ton of use cases for a car where it's kind of like, even if the ride sharing network was practically instant, within a minute, you could still get a car. Regardless of that, I think and we can debate on whether this population is 1% or 50% or higher, but there's still a group of people that will buy a car, and it might be considered a luxury item because it's obviously more expensive than, let's say, rideshare network, et cetera, but they will gladly buy a car because of the extra benefits that that car gives them, right? The extra optionality.
I see this so much in comments on my videos, like my video recently about Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, and people saying, well, I'm not going to eat fake meat. Okay, but it's not about you. It's not about Dave. And this, what about the golfer who wants to be able to have his golf clubs in the car? I mean, is there a bigger whine than that? Come on. First of all, I have golf clubs. I don't keep them in my car. It really isn't hard to take them out to the car when the car comes. When you get to the golf course, you have to take them out of the car to bring them to the golf course from the parking lot. Or I guess if you're really luxurious, you have the golf bag drop off. You still have to take it out of the car. It is not a big deal to take your golf clubs out of the car. And can you hear the world crying for all the poor, struggling golfers? Wait, you have to take your volleyball out to the car every time? What kind of whine? Like, I love Dave. I love his channel. I watch a lot of his videos. But come on, see past your suburban wealthy lifestyle and recognize that there's a heck of a lot of people that have a lot bigger problems with whether I can carry my volleyball in the car with me. Okay? Come on. Let's just get with it. If people will adapt. But there's plenty of people in the world who don't own cars now and they get along fine. I lived in Japan for a year. I didn't own a car. Somehow I managed. It's not that big of a deal. You're used to things a certain way. Things are going to change. Adapt. And if you can't adapt, there's going to be options for you, but maybe you don't get to own the fancy new thing if it doesn't fit with your lifestyle because it costs too much for that way of doing things. Or maybe you're rich enough you can buy it and own it and keep it. Okay, well, that's you. But this is a critical detail that I feel like a lot of people miss is and as an investor, and again, this is not investment advice, but as an investor, it's very challenging to avoid the trap of, well, I don't want that. That's not what I want. Okay, but it's not about you. Okay, you've got to recognize that it may be about someone else. There may be, he said, well, maybe it's only half the world's population. Well, okay. Or maybe it's 95% of the world's population. Well, even half the world's population is an awful lot of people. That's an awfully big market to satisfy. So and I challenge all of you to think about that whenever you're thinking about anything like this. Don't make it about you. Try to think about other people. And I will confess, by the way, when I bought Amazon stock in 2013, it was that I realized I was addicted to Amazon Prime for the shipping, and I was checking the store every day, the website every day to look for what else I might want to buy. But I wasn't thinking, well, I like this, so I'm going to invest in the stock. I was thinking, if I'm addicted to this now, and I know I tend to be an early adopter, there's a really good chance other people are going to get addicted to this too. So in a way, I was thinking about myself, but I extrapolated from that. Okay, how does this apply to other people? You can think about yourself in that context and then think, okay, that's me. How does this extend to others? Am I unusual, or is this something a lot of people are going to be like this? And are there a lot of people who aren't going to be like this? And who does this serve? So just some thoughts.
First of all, I think that Tesla, when we say that they're not going to sell you a car, they're not going to sell you their most affordable car. So maybe they'll keep selling the Model 3 performance or long range. Maybe they'll keep selling the Model Y. Maybe they'll keep selling only the S and X. Maybe just the Roadster. I think that they will probably, again, move up the food chain as to which cars they're going to stop selling.
I think Jesse has a really good idea there. I'm not sure he's right, but I kind of think the same way. When they release the Robo-taxi, that's the first one they're going to stop selling to consumers, or its price is going to be so high people won't buy it. I think the Model 3 and Model Y will pretty quickly become something you can only buy if you're paying the Robo-taxi price. Model S and Model X are less likely to be used in Robo-taxi form, so maybe Tesla keeps selling those longer. And same thing, Roadster is never going to be that. Roadster is going to be outrageously expensive anyway, so maybe they keep making those in low volume for the fun of it or for some other reason. But yeah, I do think that idea that Jesse has, that it moves up moves up the ladder, I think that, or moves up the food chain, I think that makes perfect sense.
Like, think about it. If there's a group of people apart from the city, let's say in suburbs / even rural areas, that really need a car, right? And they want a car to haul stuff, to carry stuff, to put stuff in, to leave it in the car basically at all times. Why would Tesla pull out the rug of the most affordable cars so that these people won't have access to affordable cars? Don't you think it's in Tesla's ethos and mission to allow these people without the highest incomes in the world, let's say, to be able to afford a compelling electric vehicle, and for Tesla to offer one of their good, cheaper vehicles?
No, that is not Tesla's ethos. That is not Tesla's mission. That might be what you want it to be, but that is not what it is. Tesla's mission is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. Their mission is not to provide low-cost cars to poor people. I don't know where you got that from, Dave, but that is not their mission. And the idea, they started with the high-priced Roadster, the first version of the Roadster. Then they came out with the Model S, then the Model X. They started out with high-priced cars. Their cars are still expensive compared to the average vehicle that's purchased in terms of an upfront price. Tesla did not start this by making cars for poor people, and that's not the path. But with that said, and you'll see this later, the Robo-taxi network will make life a lot better for poorer people. And Dave has a little bit of a disregard for that value. You'll see that later. Anyway, let's hear what Zac and Jesse have to say to that.
I think that the reach of these taxi networks is going to extend further out of the cities than most people would imagine. Because right now, to have an Uber function, you need a concentration of drivers and a concentration of users. And so the cities is perfect because the drivers will all flock to the cities because that's where the most users are. When the network can become autonomous, it doesn't cost you anything to have the car sitting around doing nothing. And in fact, the car doesn't have to be doing nothing. The car could be connected to V2G, and it could be balancing the grid, which could be making money,
right?
Just having the car sitting idle.
Now, if you just look at a car as a means of transportation, you're missing a big piece of it, which is that it's this big mobile battery. It's 75 kilowatts or 100 kilowatt hours of battery. And being able to control that robotically, put it on and off the grid whenever you want to, means that it has a whole new value to it. We've actually valued it at like $36,000 over a 3-year period.
If you follow my channel, you know I flipped when I saw that and when I heard that. So first of all, yes, I agree. And I said this earlier, that the Robo-taxi network will be able to extend into less populated areas better than Uber and Lyft, mainly because it's lower cost to do so. But with that said, it is not zero cost for the vehicle to sit doing nothing, because there's opportunity cost. If you could station the vehicle at a location where it is constantly working, then the vehicle is making more money. It's generating more revenue. It's taking more ICE vehicles off the road when it is working constantly. It is both making more money for Tesla and or its owner, and it is accelerating the transition to sustainable energy more if it is going nonstop, not stopping. Second, I can't believe people won't let go of vehicle to grid. If you watch my channel a lot, you know I've made 2 videos debunking vehicle to grid, with Tesla's former CTO, JB Straubel, telling a committee, no, we're not doing that. We just had Battery Day. Someone asked Elon about vehicle to grid, and Drew and Elon both, Drew Baglino and Elon both said, yeah, we're not doing that. It's not happening. Vehicle to grid is dead. It's dead. It's dead. It's dead. I don't understand why people are so determined that they need vehicle to grid. Yes, in theory, it could generate a small amount of revenue. The problem is that the revenue the vehicle generates while operating as a robotaxi is 10x or more the revenue it generates while operating vehicle to grid. It does not make sense. Look, Zac said $36,000 over a 3-year period. I think he's crazy. I don't think it's anywhere near that much money, but that's $12,000 a year. When as a robotaxi operating full time, it's generating $60,000 a year or more. So, and when I've looked at V2G, there was nowhere near $12,000 a year. I don't know where he got that number. Check my old videos. It's maybe $1,500 a year, maybe $5,000 a year in your dreams. Not going to happen. It's 10x or more operating as a robotaxi than it is operating vehicle to grid. Forget about it. It's done. If you want to support the grid, you make grid storage. You don't have to put wheels on it. You don't have to put a steering wheel in it. You don't have to put, a motor in it. It's just a battery and some electronics. Why would you use... I could go on for hours about how dumb vehicle to grid is, and it's so shocking to me that people keep getting hooked on it. It's over. Let it go. But getting back to the point, no, the vehicle, it's not good for robotaxis to sit doing nothing. When you achieve market saturation in the city and the suburbs, once you achieve market saturation in the city, then you might extend out into the suburbs. Once you achieve market saturation in the suburbs, then you might extend out further. But it doesn't make sense to just have a vehicle sitting doing nothing when that vehicle could be operating somewhere else making money for you and Tesla and accelerating the transition.
So then to get to your point about the car seats, it's like, yeah, of course, you're going to want car seats. So let's have some cars that have built-in car seats. Maybe they're twice as safe because they're not strapped in with a seatbelt or even, just 2 connection points down at the base. Maybe it's built into the car. Maybe, and maybe, when you want to send your kids off to soccer practice, you don't have to get in the car and drive them to soccer practice. The car comes and picks them up and drops them off and can go pick them up and drive them home. So all the stress that is on so many people's families can be alleviated. It would almost in some ways be more convenient to not have to have the soccer mom minivan, but instead, the kids can do whatever they want from school because they could just call a car. And obviously there could come with restrictions of like, you can only go home. It'll pick you up from wherever like a lot of parents, just call me whenever you want. I will come get you. That's like the speech that they give. That's on their little app thing because all these kids have cell phones. So it could come and pick them up and drive them home.
I thought that was a brilliant answer by Jesse, and I'm going to wrap it up here. There's more, I should say, there's more about car seats later that I'm probably not going to include. I'm going to do a part 2. I just realized we're pushing 40 minutes here, and I don't want to make this reaction video too long. I just thought that was really solid explanation, probably better than I would have done about how the car seats thing works. But when they talk about it later, they talk about, maybe the car seat in a Tesla with a car seat and a robotaxi with a car seat is actually designed to be much safer and much better and much easier to clean, because when you buy a car seat, you're thinking I'm only going to use this thing for 2 or 3 years. When Tesla puts a car seat in its robotaxi, it's going to see 5 to 10 times as much use, and it's going to have to last 10 years. So they design a much better car seat that's easier to clean and everything else. So, and safer. I want to thank you all for watching. Please check out my other videos. There's going to be another video coming soon with following up on this. I want to thank Joe Ramos, my channel sponsor. If you think about sponsoring the channel, check it out. Don't forget the merch, t-shirts. Check out the description below for that. Please support me on Patreon. And thank you so much for watching. Check it out. It's coming soon.